Let us kickstart today's program with the KSR anthem. I can't. I'm sorry to say, I think there was some issue with the audio here. But then let us start the program now. I welcome our head of the department, Dr. Esther Nalini, to give the welcome address.
Good morning, everyone. So Team Perio, KSRIDSR invites you all for this third edition of the Perio-Orb series of CD programs. And we fondly remember our chairman, late Lion, Dr. K.S. Rangaswamy Iyer, and our chairman, Mr. R. Srinivasan, for the continuous support. We also welcome our principal, esteemed principal, Dr. Sharath Ashokan, for the encouragement and helping us to go ahead with the third event of this series. And we especially welcome the stars of today, the speakers, Dr. Harinath Parthasarathi and Dr. P.S.T. Prakash, and for kindly consenting to present and share their knowledge with us as soon as we ask them to, and in spite of all the commitments they have. And I welcome all the speakers. I thank them again, and all the participants as well for being here today. And I hope you have a good session of gaining knowledge. And I now request our principal to share a few words of encouragement. Sir is there, able to unmute.
Due to some technical error, sir is not able to join us right now. So now I request Dr. Kokila, Reader, Department of Periodontics, to introduce the first speaker of the day. Dr. Kokila, you can unmute and give the introduction.
Kokila, please unmute Kokila. We can't hear you.
Ma'am, I'm audible now, ma'am.
Yes, Kokila.
Okay. Good morning, sir. Good morning to one and all. I have a great pleasure to introduce our honorable guest and the speaker, Dr. Harinath Parthasarathi. He's graduated BDS at Raugas Dental College, MDS at Tamil Nadu Government Dental College. He's pursuing PhD at SRM Institute of Science and Technology. Currently, he is working as a professor in Department of Periodontics and Oral Implantologist at SRM Dental College. He is an executive committee member in implant training courses at Dr. NGR Medical University. And also he is a postgraduate examiner in many universities. He has published for more than 40 publications in national and international journals and has presented many scientific papers in many national and international conferences. He has received Best Paper Award on Periodontal Wound Healing in 2003. In addition to his academic achievement, he's performed more than 10,000 periodontal surgeries, and also he has placed more than 750 implants in the and his academic industries. He's performing more aesthetic periodontal surgeries and treatment of implant failures and regenerative and periodontal techniques and full mouth rehabilitation with conventional zygomatic implants and guided implant surgeries. Sir, short time is not enough to say your more achievements, sir. So I kindly welcome you to enlighten us with a great lecture, sir. I handed over to the Dr. Harinath Parthasarathi, sir.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you are, sir. You are audible.
Yeah. So, good morning, everyone, once again. And thank you, Dr. Esther, for giving us the opportunity to share our knowledge, and to the whole team Perio at KSR Dental College for giving us this opportunity. So, today's topic, this evolution of surgical stents in implant dentistry, is something little interesting because we all know that implants have become a very standard mode of replacing missing tooth nowadays. When you give the option to the patients about bridge and implant option for replacing the tooth, mostly they prefer dental implant treatment because you don't have to do preparation of the neighboring tooth. And the associated long-term complications, sensitivity, and pulpitis issues, and so on. So people are understanding that dental implants are much safer and more predictable, and they have a much longer service when compared to conventional FPDs. So the use of surgical stents for dental implant placement has evolved over a period of time, since a few decades, I would say. The earlier stents were very simple and but less predictable. But nowadays we have more predictable stents. We have CAD/CAM based stents. We have stents based on 3D printing and based on the CBCT data, so that the stents are more predictable and they are more reliable to use nowadays. So my presentation will cover all these basic topics, which will enlighten postgraduate people who are already doing dental implants. Might be not very thrilled with the presentation because it's going to be little from basic. So it's more for the postgraduates and people who are into the learning curve of dental implants. So as I mentioned before, dental implants have become a most important and the most acceptable way of replacing a missing tooth. Previously, we were placing the implants based on the available bone. We were not worrying about whether the implant angulation or the position is more prosthetically favorable. So we were placing the implant into the available bone. And when we go for the prosthetic restoration, we had a lot of issues in terms of difficulty in restoration and long-term complication like excessive occlusal load and oral hygiene maintenance issues and so on. But now we have come to the era where implants are prosthetically driven. So we decide on the prosthesis first. We decide on the prosthetic design first, and then we look for the implant placement. In case the implant placement is not ideal within the limits of the bony dimensions, probably we should look at augmenting the site either before implant placement or during the implant placement and recreate a favorable environment for prosthetic management. So prosthetic guided implantology has eventually developed, and it has become a more successful. It has become a most important priority in terms of implant placement. So during the implant surgery, the position, the angulation of the implants are determined by various factors. The amount of residual bone on all three dimensions, typically buccolingually, mesodistally, respect to the neighboring anatomical structures, respect to the soft tissue contours, based on the occlusal plane, and so on. So there are multiple factors which are going to decide the implant placement. Just to talk about the evaluation of the dental implants. So we have since very simplified form of this surgical stent in the form of a vacuum formers. We use a vacuum form matrix which we use for as a night guard and for your bleaching trays. They were basically were used the early days for as a surgical guide. However, no, they were not very reliable in terms of the fact that the CBCT data, which actually gives the amount of bone available, the distance from the neighboring anatomical structures, all these data were not incorporated in those basic steps. We just make sure that we are able to place the implant as parallel as possible to the neighboring tooth, as parallel as possible within the bony confines, and try to place the implant as favorably for a future prosthetic rehabilitation. So that was the simplest form of your surgical stents. Then we had some classification of dental slants, and which I'll talk a little later. Then there's various methods that have been started using radiographic stents, fabricated radiographic stents for these implant placements. And they use a radiographic markers. All these thermoplastic shims, which are used as radiographic markers. They use radio opaque teeth. You can incorporate radio opaque teeth into a wax or an acrylic RPD, and then you expose a radiograph, and then based on that you decide on your. Then you fabricate a small surgical stent and make a small hole through the occlusal aspect to the center of the crown, and then use as a diagnostic as well as a surgical stent. So what is the need for a surgical guide? Okay, so we have been placing implants left, right since few decades, but over the last few decades, we have been seeing a lot of cases with peri-implantitis and long-term implant complications and failures. And when we were reviewing all these things, all these renowned authors like Brenemark and Albertson, they're given their unique criterion for long-term implant success. And it was realized that the placement of implants and the angulations led to a better prognosis of the implants, which leads to the development and need of surgical guide. So the long-term complications can be avoided when a surgical guide and stents were used. When we go retrospectively and see which were the implants which are placed using guides and which were placed freehand, they found that implants which are placed with freehand developed more complications in terms of thinning of the buccal wall and loss of soft tissue, hard and soft tissue. peri-implant mucositis and peri-implantitis, and eventually implant failures. So that is the need for your surgical guide. So the initial designs in the mid and the late 90s were either only a simple, either a diagnostic or a surgical, and they were focused on determining the correlation of the implant site with the surrounding vital structures. So the initial guides were made only with the prime focus that the implant should be placed in a very safe environment, away from your Schneiderian membrane, away from your mental nerve, your mandibular nerve, inferior nerve, and with safe distance from the neighboring tooth structure, not to damage the roots of the neighboring tooth structures. These were the prime focus of those stents made. They did not help in determining the relative parallelism between adjacent multiple implants. They were useful for only single implant situation because they strongly relied on the parallelism between two natural teeth. So when there was a situation was needed where multiple implants has to be placed, we could not achieve the parallelism between multiple implants. So the most recent ones are little expensive, but they are more accurate because they incorporate all the CBCT data, and we can place implants relatively with a great degree of parallelism when compared to those older stents. So just to talk about the various stents and the advantages and drawbacks of I'm talking about the earliest stents. The clear vacuum form stents. They were very simple and easy to fabricate. Just if you have that vacuum former, you can just take a cast, place a small acrylic teeth in the edentulous area, and then make a vacuum form. Then you use a thermoplastic vacuum form. Prepare a small hole in the center, place it on the patient's mouth, and just go ahead with your implant osteotomy and further implant placement. The drawback was that there was too much of flexibility in the positioning of the implant, and because of this, they are less accurate. Then you had your self-cure acrylic stents with lead strips. Lead strips are radio-opaque. So again, they were very simple to fabricate, but they were used only as an imaging and not as a surgical stent. So when you expose this stent to a radiograph, it will show how parallel it is. However, you cannot use this as a surgical stent. Then came the surgical your stents, acrylic stents with metal sleeves. They were more accurate because they were able to place the implant in the right dimension, exactly parallel to each other and neighboring tooth and all these things. We could place multiple implants which are parallel to each other, but this makes that the whole process little expensive. And these metal tubes and discs do not provide the flexibility. This was the problem. See, too much flexibility also is a problem. Lack of flexibility also is rigidity also is a problem. Because sometimes when we see all these CBCT data and you do a surgical stent and then proceed with your surgical procedure, we face a lot of complications like they were not very accurate. The stents are not very accurate, and if you blindly go ahead with the stent osteotomy just based on the stent, sometimes we go utterly wrong. So you need flexibility also during your surgical procedure. In case something is going wrong during the initial osteotomy phases, probably you should stop using the stent and go freehand, change the angulation, change the preparation style, and so on. Then your acrylic stents with gutta percha, they were having acceptable accuracy, but they were not as accurate as metal sleeves and discs. So just to sum up the various drawbacks and So a surgical guide, what's the definition of surgical guide? Just for the information to postgraduates and undergraduates in case they are available here. So any device used as a guide for surgically shaping the alveolar process or contouring the soft tissues. Any guide, this is a surgical guide. Surgical guide is a very broad terminology. It's not just a guide just for implant placement. So we can even use guides, CB 3D printed guides for GBR procedures to recontour the bone, to do bone augmentation. Some guides, basically, but we are talking about guides now which are helping to assist as in proper surgical implant placement and angulation of the implants, and guides used to assist in establishing desired occlusion during orthodontic and other grafting procedures. So guides can be defined based on all these things, not only for implant placement. There can be, you can use a guide for orthodontic planning and orthodontic surgeries, and you can use guides for GBR procedures. So surgical guides can be used for multiple purposes. So we have surgical stents, diagnostic and surgical stents. We have just only radiographic stents. So if you are going to describe a stent as just a radiographic stent, no, you know very clearly that you are not using as a surgical stent. It's only for a diagnostic purpose, and you can do only evaluation of the position of the implant and the future position of the implant, and probably the safe distance available, and probably determine the rough diameter of your implant, the length of the implant. So what are the various components of this surgical guide? Usually surgical guides have basically two components, the metal cylinder, the guiding cylinder and the contact surfaces. So the contact surfaces is going to either fit on the patient's gum or the bone or the teeth. So again, you can classify the stents as tooth supported stents or bone supported stents or gum supported, gingiva supported stents. So whether based on where the stent is going to get seated. Okay, for example, it's going to be a full mouth NHLS case going for a full mouth rehabilitation. Obviously, you know that you can either you can use only a stent which is going to rest on a soft tissue or on the bone. There's no tooth there. If you're going to use, we're going to place implant in single or multiple sites, probably you can either use mostly a tooth supported stents are the primary choice there, and sometimes we go for even a bone supported stents. So where this stent is getting seated, you can basically classify the stents based on that. Then you have the second component, which is the cylinders, and these cylinders, they help in guiding the surgical implant placement. The drills go through this cylinders. They help in doing the osteotomy in the right location and in the right orientation. So this helps in placing the implants in such a way that you have sufficient bone on all sides of the implant, epicocoronally, buccolingually, mesiodistally. See, I don't want to go into the basics of all these things, because if you have started basic implantology right now, you know that at least 1 mm of buccal bone and lingual bone should be available around the implant. It should be at least 1.52 mm from the neighboring tooth structure. We always try to be as safe as possible from the neighboring structure by at least 2 mm. Anatomic landmarks like the nerve or shielding membrane. But of course, when there is a limited bone, we go and engage the implant directly into the sinus floor. We go very close to the mandibular nerve or the frontal nerve. So sometimes what happens is the idea of using these surgical stents in these critical areas, because these are the areas where you can go wrong. See, when there is no abundant bone available, then the surgical guides are not required, because it's going to be a very simple and straightforward situation. Even a beginner can do a very safe implant placement. When there is a compromised bone volume, buccolingually, epicocoronally, very limited bone weight, there only there is a great need for the surgical guide, because you can do a nerve bypass. I'll just show you a couple of images where showing that nerve bypass, but this is possible only with a guided surgical stents with your CBCT data incorporated. So you get all these advantages with the surgical, okay? And you take care of not damaging the neighboring anatomic structures like nerve, shielding membrane, or tuberosity region. And you get the implant in such a way that it is compatible to a great final prosthesis, a final FPD or a full mouth prosthesis. So the fabricating design concepts, there are basically 3 designs with which you can fabricate a surgical stent. And based on the freedom you get during this fabrication, You call them as a stents which are having a non-limiting design, partially limiting design, and completely limiting. These design concepts are classified based on the amount of surgical restriction the surgeon gets during the implant placement. So what is a non-limiting design? A non-limiting design is the one which gives a very rough idea. For example, a surgical stent, a stent made with a vacuum sheets, a clear transparent stents or a self-cure acrylic stents. These are stents which gives a rough idea of your implant placement, a rough angulation. It doesn't give any great angulation, just location of the implant only it can give. It just gives us a pinhole for guide your implant placement. And because of this non-limiting design, it cannot give a great implant or angulation, or it cannot help you to give a sometimes when you have the current and the latest generation of surgical stents, your 3D printed surgical stents, they are you can go ahead with giving a immediate provisional prosthesis. You can do an immediate loading with those kind of surgical stents, which is not available with this. That choice and advantage is not available with this non-limiting designs. So the hole we make in the stent indicate the optimal position of the dental implant, but no angulation details can be available. And though no Almog et al. Has described the circumference, they used many ways of doing this basic non-limiting design kind of stents, using a lead strip, using a radio opaque teeth, and so on. So these are the images showing a non-limiting design, vacuum sheets, and radio opaque teeth, and you just make a small hole in the center of the occlusal tooth structure, and just do then just place your do your initial osteotomy, and most of these stents can be used only for the initial drilling purpose, so that you get a rough idea of the angulation of the angulation of the implant. And then usually it is done later, they are done only freehand. Okay. And the next is your partially limiting design. In such design, the first drill using the surgical guide and the remainder is finished with the surgeon, just very similar to your initial non-limiting design. Also, it's very similar kind of stuff. We use only for the initial drills, and subsequently we do it with freehand. So the fabrication of the radiographic template can be converted into a surgical guide. So initially, your non-limiting design, you use that only for a initial drill or just only for a diagnostic purpose, nothing else. Whereas in the partially limiting design, you just go to the next stage where you use it as a diagnostic, that is radiographic stent, and additionally you can use that as your surgical stent. So various authors have proposed different techniques involving modification in the stage of fabrication, like using a surgical stent, using a radiographic marker, and we can use an imaging the type based on the type of imaging used. Also, you can have a lot of variations, and the conversion process involved in converting the radiographic template into surgical guide also has been very well elaborated nowadays. So all the aforementioned techniques, they fail to completely restrict the angulation of the surgical lines. Again, they don't restrict the angulation, because you initially do a pilot drill, then you remove the stent, go ahead with a freehand drilling. So the angulation is not restricted, and because of this, you don't get the perfect implant placement, which is going to be absolutely parallel, absolutely safe from the anatomical structures. So the various radiographic markers which have been used for making these partially limiting designs are using some metal ball bearings and lead foils, dual cure composites mixed with colored chalk. All these radiopaque markers can be incorporated into the radiographic stent. Or you can use a gutta percha, you can use a stainless steel tubes, you can use guided sleeves, you can use brass tubes, you can even use a barium sulfate coating on thin orthodontic wires. People have innovated. India, we try to do all this jugaad kind of stuff. we try to use simpler devices and make it more competent stuff. So people have tried various simple materials to fabricate all these radiographic and surgical stents, and then they have even used that to some degree as a surgical stent by making a small metal sleeve into it, and not just do only a primary osteotomy, then go ahead with the surgical placement also. However, you have a lot of restrictions in that. You have there can be a lot of errors because they don't use a CBCT data. Okay. So again, one more example where they've used a sticky wax, and they've applied lead foils, and they have exposed an OPG to know the rough angulation. If I'm going to place the implant in this lead foil zones, are my implants going to be safe? Are my implants going to be into sound bone? Are they going to serve right biomechanical purpose? It's not just placing the implant in an ideal position or safe from the anatomical landmarks and so on. Your implant position, the distribution of the implants, we call it as AP distribution, anterior-posterior distribution. It has to be very optimal and ideal so that you don't end up with a biomechanical failure in the long term. Because you can't have too many implants in one zone and very less implants in another zone. For example, if you have placed more implants in the anterior and less implants in the posterior, it's going to be a disaster. You need to spread your implants ideally into all the zones. Especially, you need to have more implants into the more occlusal stress-bearing zones like the premolars and the posteriors. So people have used all these thermoplastic shims, the edentulous areas. You prepare you have a clear acrylic a tooth-like structure. You place the lead foil. You expose this to an OPG and see whether these give the right angulation and position. Same for a single tooth situation. This is where they've used instead of lead foil, they've used a radio opaque teeth. This radio opaque acrylic teeth is showing the right position. And if you do an osteotomy through this tooth on the model, and then you place it on the patient's mouth, and through that prepared drill space, probably you might end up with a implant placement which is going to be reasonably acceptable. So you prepare the cast in the patient with the missing tooth, do the wax up, do a radiograph, and try to see if it's going to be is in a right position or not. There are chances that you can even duplicate the patient's existing dentures. The maxillary denture can be duplicated using radio opaque resin and using stereolithographic surgical stents. You can just 3D scan that denture, and you can just print a model with some acrylic metal sleeves. Take a radiograph, see if they are in the right position, and we can use them as both as a radiographic stent and as well as a surgical stent. Then coming to the third type of concept design, where it's completely limiting designs. So this restricts the osteotomy in all planes so that you don't go wrong anywhere. So sometimes additionally these kind of completely limiting designs, which is known for the present generation surgical stents, which are 3D printed and based on CBCT data, they have drill stops. So there is very less chance that you can do over drilling and damage the nerve or enter into the sinus space. So you can even have drill stops which can limit your apicocoronal position. And as the surgical guides becomes more restrictive, less of decision making and subsequent surgical execution is done almost intraoperative. So for making these completely limiting designs, nowadays we don't even think about all these two earlier design concepts. Most of us are going for this completely limiting design only. So we need to have the CBCT data, and then you have your CAD/CAM, your scanning, scanning and then milling using a 3D printer, and you get your completely guided, CBCT guided surgical stents. The advantages of this completely limiting design are that it's a virtual 3D view. You can first you're going to take a CBCT data, so you can see virtually the bone compartment, all the 3 dimensions. You can see what is the the bone morphology. The surgeon can visualize the surgical area well before implant placement. All the you can assess the risks of inadequate osseous support, and you can see whether there is any compromise to the neighboring structure. Now you have a lot of softwares where you can incorporate the 3D data, the CBCT data. You can virtually place the implant, and you can see whether these implants, you can choose your implant designs also. You can choose your implant whether you're going to place a Nobel implant or a Zimmer implant or a Strong implant, Aiden implant, 3A, whatever implant systems you are placing, you can always choose that implant system, the size you are going to determine. You can place that virtually in the 3D planning software and see whether you're going to damage or very near any neighboring structures. And you can lock that implant angulation and position that can be sent to the your prosthetic labs. And now is just a mail is required to communicate, and then they make the surgical stents. So the advantage with this complete guided surgical stents, where the CBC data is incorporated, 3D planning is done, and completely 3D printed stents are available, is that you can do your final restoration also, immediate final restoration, and you can do an immediate loading. Whether you're going to go for an immediate functional loading or not is a different thing. At least you can go for immediate non-functional loading very easily. Provisional restorations is very much possible. So now you get 3D printed PMMA bridges, which are now available just for immediate implant placement intrasurgically. After doing your implant placement, you can place this immediate provisionals. So patients are extremely happy with this kind of advanced treatment options. So incorporation of the prosthetic planning using the scanographic template allows the treatment to be optimized both from the prosthodontic as well as the biomechanical point of view. And this, and many times you go ahead with flapless surgeries. Many of the implant surgeons, when they are non-periodontists or non-surgeons, they prefer doing a flapless procedure because raising the flap and suturing them seems to be a big task for many people. So the advantage of going flapless is there with your fully guided surgical stents. What are drawbacks of these completely limiting designs? No special training for getting familiarized with the entire system is required. You should know how to read a CBCT data. You should know how to use a 3D planning software, and you should know how to what advice. You cannot get any random CT. Only a CBCT is most preferable nowadays because the slices are more favorable. So all this communication has to be done properly, and after all this thing is done, we have to communicate to the lab, and once we get the 3D printed stent, you should know how to use this 3D printed stent, how to stabilize them, how to place it in the right position. You should know where are the errors, where are the possible errors you can get with these surgical stents. Sometimes it may not fit, sometimes it may not because of the soft tissue rebound, it may not sit in ideal height on the soft tissues, ending up with less osteotomy preparation. And the errors can happen in many areas, starting from scanning, starting from your radiographic stents, and starting from your planning. The software can go wrong. The rapid prototype of the surgical stent, your stereolithographic model can go wrong. Transfer of information regarding the process can go wrong. So there are a lot of areas for errors, even with in this design. So getting familiarized is very, very important. Okay. So then coming to the next aspect, it is called as this cast-based guided surgical stent. Here you don't use CBCT data. You just take a cast, use a conventional die cutting, do a conventional die cutting. Then you make a cast section in that proposed implant site, do a bone sounding using your conventional methods, where you give LA and check for the soft tissue, both buccally, lingually, occlusally, then transfer the data. And you can use a guided sleeve and you can reinforce that guided sleeve using some either an impression material or some polyvinyl siloxane rubber based materials and so on. And this can be used as a surgical guide, but this is not going to be very accurate because this is just based on your cast based. So this is how typically a cast based things are done. So you can have a metal guided pins which can be incorporated into that acrylic stents, and then expose it to the expose a radiograph and see whether if the orientation are parallel to each other. Then this is image number 10 is showing about how we go ahead with the area where it is freshly extracted socket. This is where you place a guided pin initially, take a radiograph, check for the angulation, and once you are satisfied with the angulation, you feel it's right, then you remove that metal sleeve from inside, use that space as a for your implant osteotomy. And this is what we discussed, the cast-based surgical stents. And this is the radiographic view of this cast-based surgical stent. And this gives a rough idea about the parallelism of the implant is going to get between the neighboring tooth, how buccolingually, how safe it is, whether you have adequate bone on all dimensions, and so on. Then comes your most recent and most advanced, your CAD/CAM based surgical stents. For this, you basically need a CT or a CBCT, preferably a CBCT, because it's going to be more precise, more accurate. Better slices are available in CBCT. The images are converted into DICOM format, and they are incorporated into a 3D planning area. And then using stereolithographic models, you get the surgical drill guides. This three-dimensional, the virtual three-dimensional view, gives us a lot of information on how accurate the surgeon is. And of course, we have discussed this earlier. You get almost a accurate accurate implant placement, flapless surgeries, and immediate provisionalization and immediate loading is very much possible with this kind of surgical science. The procedure for fabrication of this CAD/CAM surgical guides can be divided into the following steps. One is fabrication of the radiographic guide. Then using CBCT data, the implant planning using an interactive software. We have a lot of softwares. The Simplant is a very universal software. You have Nobel Guide softwares. You have too many softwares nowadays which can be very effectively used for this 3D implant surgical planning. Then once you have done the planning using the software, the data can be transferred, and then that's the stage of fabrication of the stereolithographic drill guides. The radiographic template must be an exact replica of the desired prosthesis, because, for example, if you are going to do a full mouth rehabilitation, you have to do a denture before, and then use the denture as a radiographic template. Use all your radiopaque markers in the denture. Take a CBCT, then go ahead with your guide preparation. So using the generated scan data, a 3D reconstruction of the edgeless mandible. For example, you're going for a full mouth, full arch rehabilitation, lower complete denture situation. So you do a reconstruction of the edgeless mandible with the superimposed prosthesis with the planned tooth position in place. So that's why I was telling about a proper CD is required before doing exposing the patient to for a CBCT. You place a radiographic opaque markers. You determine the position of the implant based on those markers. Design the surgical stent virtually, and then you fabricate the surgical stent using your 3D printers. Now we should, at this stage, we should understand what is the stereolithography. This is a process where you prepare the surgical stent. The data, all the software data is converted into a real model using your stereolithographic material. This permits radiographic and complete and complex 3D implants stimulation and fabrication of computer-generated surgical templates with pre-planned positioning and depth for your implant placement. So the serial lithographic model consists of a vat containing the liquid. I just don't want to go in detail. I'll just show you this image. This is typically a 3D printer where you all have this tank with a resin tank with all these serial lithographic models, and this over a period of time prepares this 3D model. See, I'm a periodontist, I'm not a prosthodontist, so I cannot give you great clarity on how the exact stepwise how this printer works. But since all these labs, many of the labs supports us with all these work, we just have to do a planning till the stage of 3D planning using that software. It's our job. We must make sure that we give a right guidance to the lab, and once that is done, it's up to the lab to fabricate. And we must be, and then the subsequent step of doing a surgical procedure, we must ensure that the stents are made properly. And by doing the initial drilling itself, we must be able to assess whether the stents are made accurately or not. But this comes with little experience. Probably, you need little more time to. It's a learning curve, basically. So a typical example of how, for example, if you see the implant in 3-7 region, looks like as if the implant has gone completely through the mandibular canal. But if you see in the CBCT, in the different sections, you can see the implant was planned in such a way that it was placed more buccally. So by placing it more buccally, the surgeon has completely bypassed the canal, and he is not only because this is a situation where he has placed only 2 implants for replacing a 4-unit bridge probably. Here we cannot place a very short implant. Of course, there are options where you can place only a very short implant, say like a 5 mm or a 6 mm implant. Of course, long-term data on short implants are not very successful or not very favorable. So whenever possible, we are supposed to place the longest and the most widest implants possible. And here only you have the advantage of using a fully guided surgical steps, where all the CBCT data, and based on your a surgical planning, on your virtual planning, we have decided that we can place the implant buccally so that we have sufficient bone on the labial side. At the same time, you can bypass the nerve. See here, the surgeon has even achieved bicortical stabilization. So when you have bicortical stabilization, you get very good primary stability. And that's going to help you for even going for an immediate positional load. Is very much possible. So all these advantages are there with this 3D plan. One more diagrammatic representation, how you can see straightforward situation. Again, I'm saying it's not that there's no major need of a fully guided surgical steps. But when there's a compromise situation, definitely these guides are going to be of great help. This image shows a bicortical implant and how this implant has been placed, where this implant is definitely not placed in the most ideal location, because the ideal location is going to be somewhere here. But unfortunately, you have your canal in that location. So we can bypass the canal and place the implant in such a way that you get this bicortical stabilization. All these narrow implants, the typical bicortical implants, they primarily rely on the bicortical stabilization. One cortical engagement in the coronal area and one cortical engagement in the apical area. Unless you get these 2 cortical engagements, these bicortical implants are not very good or great to use. I'm not a great fan of bicortical implants, but I know that these implants need a good amount of cortical engagement. That's why most of these implants are very long and they gauge the sinus flows and pterygoid plates and so on. So definitely guided surgical implant placement only gives this advantage and this freedom and the safety margins. So what is this double scan protocol? So when we do this completed guided surgical stents, especially for your full mouth rehabilitations, for making an artifact-free, high-resolution digital of the radiographic guides, some authors have developed this double scan technique. So first scan is done when the patient's wearing the radiographic guide. The second scan is done only with the surgical guide. It's not done in the patient's mouth. This with the spherical markers helps in the right orientation of the guide in the patient's mouth. The scans are superimposed on each other, resulting in a 3D bone model of the patient together with the 3D model of the radiographic guide. The combination of the 3D bone model and 3D radiographic data lets the dental professionals to evaluate the bone quality accurately and then do the planning in such a way that you place the implant in the most optimal, the most prosthetically ideal position. So again, this classification we have already discussed based on the area of operation, whether it's going to be tooth supported, usually done for partially edentulous areas. Advantages that the entry of the drill into the bone while drilling can be observed while maintaining the position of the drill. The chance of the slipping of the drill into the vestibular space can be avoided. Drawback is that this stent can be used only with pilot drills, and the rest of the drill has to be done freehand by the operator. Second is a bone supported drill. This is done for completely edentulous areas depending upon the area of availability, depending upon the availability of the bone and the ridge morphology. And here, you can use your tissue supported stents, and where these transitional dentures made for the are used as a surgical radiographic markers during the process. Later, the same denture can be used as a stent for your implant placement. Cost effective because already the patient is wearing a denture. The same denture is used as a surgical guide or your radiographic guide. It is not the best option when accuracy is considered. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. You
Yes,
are.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Suddenly a call came. I am sometimes what happens when we do a presentation, we don't know whether we are audible or not. Sometimes they call us and they inform us that we are not audible. Okay. Thank you. So the drawbacks is that it is not the best option when accuracy is considered, because the instability of the stent might create challenges during the surgery, as it is just a tissue supported stent. So when it's tissue supported, sometimes you make an impression with a lot of pressure, and this rebound effect of the soft tissue can have a lot of errors. There is a lot of discussion and debates on this, which we may not have much time on this to discuss right now. So classification. So again, based on the usage, if we are going to use a stent only for the pilot drill, we call it the pilot guides. This surgical guides allows only pilot drill so that any angulation control is achieved, and depth control is to be obtained manually by assessing the marking on drills. After pilot drilling, the surgical guides has to be removed and the osteotomy has to be done in the absence of the surgical guide. Then we have the complete drill guides. It's different. There are different drill keys or sleeves. The different sleeves for different diameters of drills, which are changed concomitantly as osteotomy is widened. Angulation as well as osteotomy is controlled by guide. Depth is controlled manually. Then we have the safe guides or the easy guides. These guides have sleeves with additional implant stoppers that control the depth of drilling, allows both osteotomy and implant placement. However, it controls the depth so that you don't go don't do over osteotomy and damage the neighboring structures, especially in areas where there's limited bone. So you have safe guides, you have pilot guides, and you have complete drill guides. So I'll just give information about those complete drill guides. So before that, we'll see what are the rules for planning a different usage of stents. When you do a tooth supported guides, that minimum of 3 stable teeth should be present. Stable teeth means a tooth which are not periodontally weak. They should not have any mobility, so that your stents are placed in the right positions as they are planned. So 3 stable teeth should be present to support the guide during surgery. It is going to be a mucosa supported guide. It is used for fully edentulous sites mostly. The advantage that there is less or no tissue reflection is requires a scan process and surgical guides during this surgery. You have your bone supported guides. They are usually in partially edentulous sites and completely edentulous sites only. We can use these bone supported guides. When used in partially edentulous sites, it should possess at least 3 of supporting bone or 3 teeth to need that should need replacement. So bone guides are especially used when endothelial sites possess thin bones. So when you have very thin bone, you need bone guides, because you can see, you raise the flap, you can have a good view of the implant site, and you know how buccally or lingually you are, and based on that you can even change your angulation, change your implant position, or even change your implant dimension, implant size and dimension. So the ideal requirements is that it should be your guide should be rigid. It should be in the correct position, buccolingually, mesodistally, and epicocoronally. It should be easy to fabricate. We should have stents that is easy to fabricate. It should not be very cumbersome, too expensive, and so on. Again, it should be having good use during surgical placements. I know, so we were fortunately part of a team which we did along with Dr. Gunasiran. The first surgical guide in India, fully guided surgery, was placed for the first time in India in a private practice, Rajan Dental Institute, and I was a part of the team at that time. So we had a lot of difficulty because we need to have so much of mouth opening, because when you use a guide, we have to use a long drills. I'll just show the image of that fully guided surgical kit. All the drills are very long because they have to accommodate for that extra height of the surgical stents. So when you have patients with limited mouth opening, at that time all these stents were so bulky. Nowadays we have little lesser bulkier stents. However, still you have that surgical use, the ease of surgical implant placement during the surgery is very important. So we at that time, I'm talking about some 13-14 years back. So at that time we had a lot of difficulty because patient had restricted mouth opening. Even though it was a fully ridiculous case, the mouth opening was not enough. So that kind of surgical discomforts are there sometimes. So we should have that ease of using the surgical stents. It must be durable. It should not shrink. It should not collapse. It should be at least it should have a decent shelf life. Okay, and most importantly, sometimes you can expose the stent directly to the bone, to the soft tissue. Tooth support stent is not a major issue. It's going to be a soft tissue or a bone supported stent. We must make sure it's made of a non-irritant material. The surgical extension, we must make sure this template is extended properly so that it is more stable. When no remaining teeth are present, the template should extend onto the unreflected soft tissue regions, which means it should rest on mucosa or tissues where it is healthy and thing, especially to the palate and the tuberosity. Mostly we make sure that we engage the palate, we engage the tuberosity where no teeth are present. So in this way, the guided templates may be used after the soft tissue has been deflected from the implant site and during the implant osteotomy. The ideal angulation for implant insertion should be visualized during surgery and requires at least 2 reference points for each implant. So these are some basic things. I think I can skip because I'm just running. I think we are running short of time, and the next person is also waiting. So I'll just skip this gingival contouring also because this is not about guided implant placements. So the advantage of all these surgical guides is that it decreases the manual errors. It is associated with this freehand implant placement. It is minimally invasive because most of them it is flapless. The post-op surgical problems are minimized because it's flapless, no sutures. Psychologically, both the patient and the clinicians are very happy. The implants are prosthetically driven components, and any deviation can be but it should be the precision is a problem because any deviation can lead to it can really damage the results in terms of functions. So with the surgical guides, implant placements has become more accurate. Okay, and safety is a very important thing because you are very safe from your anatomical landmarks and all those things. It's become very predictable because you can tell the patient that I'm going to place implant in a very predictable zone. I can do an immediate loading. I can restore. I can give you a provisional teeth and so on. Hygiene, it is hygienic because it's well prepared, contoured, and it's very safe. And one of the biggest advantages that surgical time is greatly reduced. Intraoperatively, when you raise the flap and look for the ideal bone, try to place the implant in the most ideal situation. There's a lot of surgical time involved. Patient becomes very tired, and sometimes if there's a lot of bleeding, we have a lot of complications associated with that. when it's going to be fully guided surgery, or it's completely is just like a just a breeze it is. Sometimes we place all these all on 6, all on 4 implants in just less than half an hour we places these implants if it's going to be very accurate and tightly fabricated. The guide itself can act as a temporary prosthesis, gives better accessibility and good visibility of the surgical procedures. Drawbacks: surgical guides do not allow the predetermined position of the dental implant, and if any modification is required, for example, if there's an error in fabrication of the stent and there's any modification, this stent is not going to allow any modification. Any tissue changes has occurred, post your fabrication, like there's any swelling or any hard tissue changes that cannot be accommodated in this stent because they are very rigid. Guide dislocation can happen during your surgery, and no guide loosening can happen. So sometimes your drills can get lodged in the stents, get locked into the stents. These are some intrasurgical discomforts which we are normally issues we normally face. Sometimes when you want to, and even the startup cost of this surgical software planning can be a little expensive because it is not as cheap as, and there's the great learning curves required. So these are the steps, these are the things. Implant guide surgical kit, where you have a drill handle, guided tube, guide tubes, C handles, the template fixation pins, retentive anchor drivers, and the stop keys, the mucosal punches, the T-sleeves. So this is the flow chart. Do a diagnosis and treatment planning. Virtual implant and processes planning can be done in the software using your CBCT data. You select the particular implant system and the component. You can just click and drag that implant into that planner and see whether the implant is in ideal position. Then you can plan the surgical guide compatible with the particular implant system. If more than 3 teeth is there, if less than you can use a tooth bond. If less than 3 teeth, you can go for a mucosa or a bone bond surgical guides. Selection of anchors, and depending upon the site, the implant number, angulation, and anatomical limitations. Surgical guide fabrication, online ordering is possible with most of the software. Just have to send a mail of this data. Disinfection of the received guides. Just immerse your surgical guide into a povidone, a highly concentrated povidone solution. That's more than sufficient for disinfecting that surgical guides. For teeth supported guides, evaluate on the cast and the patient's mouth. Make sure it is fitting rightly on the cast and then on the patient's mouth. And for mucosa supported guides, make sure the cast and the patient's mouth it's properly fitting. For bone supported guides, reevaluate a digital bone model. Verification of specific surgical drills and drill keys. Make sure you have a proper surgical drills and the drill keys which are required for placing these drills. Then stabilize the guide in the patient's mouth using anchor pins. Usually, these anchor pins are available for full mouth cases only. Do a drilling sequence and place your implants. So, selection of retentive anchor pins. Usually, we use these anchor pins for stabilizing the surgical stents. Usually 3 anchor pins, one in the anterior, one each in the posterior region is required for supporting this mucosa supported guides. Usually these anchor pins are mostly for your full mouth rehabilitation cases. And for tooth supported guides, if its dental site is bound by teeth bilaterally, then the fixation anchor is positioned in the middle of the dental site. And if dental region, fixation anchors can be positioned as distantly as possible, not to damage in neighboring tooth structures. And for your bone supported guides, 2 fixation anchors are enough to rigidly fix the surgical screws. See, these are simple things. Anchor pins are thin, long, sharp, screw-like structures, and you have to just place them into the place, either screw them or give a gentle tap, it goes and engages into the bone, and this makes the whole guide rigid and immobile. You can go ahead with your implant placement. And finally, to conclude, in order to achieve a successful final treatment outcome, position at least equivalent to the maximum deviation of the implant placement is important. This has been achieved clinically with the help of a computer-aided surgical kit. But compared to the conventional technique, limitations with this computer-aided implant surgery requires greater investment and effort and a small learning curve also. And based on the clinical data, the image guidance is not required for cases with sufficient anatomical orientation and good bone height. So as I mentioned previously, if you have ideal bone width and height, this guide may not be of great help. You can go for do a freehand drilling. So this guide will be of great use only in areas where there is a compromised bone height, very close anatomical landmarks, where you have to bypass the nerve and engage the cortical plates and so on. So this guided surgical, this computer-aided planning and imaging guided surgery can be carried out when implant positioning is to be precisely executed and when safe positioning of the implant with optimal use of available bone is required, and whenever a CT scan is recommended as a diagnostic. So you need to have a CT scan, and it is mostly required for implant placement in sites where the bone volume is highly compromised, and there is a need for immediate loading, and there is a need for immediate progression. So I hope I have given sufficient information on the various guides, the indications, contraindications, where which kind of guides can be used. And I have not added much of clinical data because the next presenter, Dr. Prakash, is completely talking about the surgical aspect of using these guides, and I think you'll be overloaded with surgical information there. That's why I have not used much of surgical information. I once again thank Dr. Esther and the team Perio at KSR Dental College for giving us this opportunity, and I hope I've done good justice for the presentation. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Hello, sir. It was a wonderful presentation. It was our pleasure to have you. Very sure this would have been useful for all the participants here. We will have the question and answer for this session after the second speaker, sir. So
Sure.
now I would request you to please accept this certificate on our behalf. பண்றேன். சரி விடு நான் பண்றேன். இல்ல
I think I received that certificate.
One.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I request all the participants to please switch on their videos for a small photo session. We'll just take a screenshot, sir. Switch on your video. Thanks. Now, thank you, sir. Now it is time for the second speech of the day. I request Dr. Bharati, Reader, Department of Periodontics, to introduce our second speaker of the day.
Good morning, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to present a welcome speech for my ever-enthusiastic teacher, Dr. P.S.T. Prakash sir, who is currently working as a professor in SRM Dental College, Ramapuram. He did his BDS from Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR Medical University and MDS from Sri Ramachandra University, Chennai. He went on to do his LASES MS from Academy of Laser Dentistry, USA. I am glad to say that he is the first Indian to become the mentor for American Academy of Laser Dentistry in 2017, and also he won the Best Best Mentor Award in the same program. In addition to that, sir has also won the Best Research Award with a gold medal and a cash prize from the hands of Chancellor of SRM University in 2015. He holds the post of Scientific Chairman for the prestigious Society of ISPRP twice in the year of 2020 and 2021. Sir is Editor-in-Chief for the Journal of Interdisciplinary Dentistry and Reviewer for the Journal of Pedontology, Clinical Advances in Periodontics and Journal of Dental Research. He has got numerous publications in national and international journals with high impact factor. Sir always has a great passion towards implants, and it is truly a privilege to have the opportunity to learn from such a well-versed and experienced person. We welcome you, sir, for your enlightening presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bharati. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yeah, I know it's a great commotion and going on with the exam in between. So, okay, let's not take much of time. I think after hearing a wonderful speech by Dr. Hari sir, I was listening to it in between. So I'll try to keep up that tempo, what sir has done. So we'll go ahead. Shall I share the screen, doctor?
Yes, sir.
Is it visible?
I have made. Yes, sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the PPT is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, how do I push this up? Okay, so let's go ahead with the presentations here. I think sir is. Am I audible, doctor? Everything is clear, right? Can I go ahead? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Go ahead. You're audible.
Yes, madam. Thank you. So we are going to deal something with a number of cases which we have done over here in our department and a little bit outside. So I think guided sir has given you a clear-cut idea about what are all the different types of guides are. So just a little bit of small history which I wanted to tell about. If you see this picture on the right side and the left side, you can see a difference in how the history has evolved. We used to start with typewriter to telephones, and now we have your gadgets which are more advanced in nature. So we can't keep cribbing and crying with the old things which we had. So we need to move forwards. This is what this picture says. So this is a combination of both. As we are evolving, I think the science is also evolved, and where we are going down is digital dentistry. So this is what is going to be the future. So these are all the things which we started with. First was radiographic assessment, and then came CBCT, then came the guided implant softwares, navigation implant systems, 3D printing and robotic surgeries. Now actually robotics is what in Japan and China is the talk of the town, and it will slowly come in and engulf a lot of people over here who are there in India also. But where we are standing is at the navigation implant system, which few of the colleges have. But mostly what we follow is this guided implant software. Why do you need guided? Because of the precision which it gives. It gives you a 3-dimensional way of placing an implant with least amount of error. So this is what that system provides. If you see the older days, we used to take IOPA, we used to keep a GP point and measure and say this is the height which is available. Worst come worst, what we used to do is to keep a cycle ball in the OPG and measure what is the amount of magnification which that ball has made, through which we will decide to reduce the bone quantity or the height. Then came the bone mapping. This was again one more different way of measuring bone width, the buccolingual width. So these are all the various systems which are there. Slowly, we knew that these were all 2-dimensional. They were not 3-dimensional. So things wanted to change. And that's when your history of CBCT started to come. Because in the X-ray, what looks like here as a halo band effect, which we think that it's going to fail. Most of the time, me and my HOD sir have an argument that this is an implant with an X-ray which is going to fail. But when you open up, you can see a good amount of osseointegrated implant. This happens, and this happens because of the X-ray beam which is getting diverted. So this is not a failing implant or a failed implant. This is an implant because the radiation, that thing is seen, which is called as a halo around effect, which we usually take it as peri-implantitis and which we scare, but this is not the truth. So as I said before, the cycle balls were the most important things which we used to think for diameter and then for placement. And based on that, we used to prepare a CD and then place the implants. Now things are changing. Your CBCT is what the one which gives you the clear-cut buccal dimensional width and the height precisely. The CBCT not only helps in that, it gives you a beautiful anatomic landmark, which it shows. You can trace the nerve, you can trace the height of the sinus, residual crestal ridge, everything you can trace it within CBCT. And not only that, the technology is so improved now that when you go into these digital softwares, you can bring in your implants and put it down into the picture and say, this is where is my implant being placed. This is the height of the implant and the width of the implant. Three-dimensionally, we can measure. You can see the CBCT as in the lower DICOM files. You can see the implant being at the crest, and you have a good buccal and the linear cortical plate. This is what your CBCT will give you. But will this give me the placement? Now I know how much width I have to place, how much of length I have to place. But if I have to place an implant, can I reproduce the same thing there inside the patient's mouth? That is still questionable, because what you are doing is a freehand drilling. So when you drill, not necessary, this position can form there. So that's why they started bringing in surgical guides to bring in 100% reproducibility. So these are the different cross sections with the CBCT, and this will tell you about how you are going to place. So after placement, the one previous picture, if you see the one which was there between the cortical plates, but after placement, when you see, you can see that your lingual cortical plate is under threshold. So buccally, you have left good amount of bone, but lingually, you are trying to hamper that area. But even though this is placed properly. So when you take these DICOM files which are there in the CBCT, and you want to put it forward, and you want to try to make a guide, I will show you a small video next about how this can be prepared. So these are different sections which will tell you width and the height of your CBCT. This is a video which I wanted to play for you. This is one of our cases. We wanted to first check out miss opposing to the first quadrant. In the second quadrant, which was there in the upper molar area. So first we wanted to run around and check to see the bone dimension. So once we did that, we brought these DICOM files into a software, which will show me that these implants which I can place and check my position. So now I have placed an implant over here in the second quadrant. Wait, I will change the position. Yeah. Now I bring up the tooth structure. Next, I position my implant parallelly and bring it to the center. If I do this over here, I need to see this. Even after this bone, it was not the same. See, sectionally, it was going mesially, and interproximally, it was not sitting in the correct place. So I had to adjust that with the tooth as well as the bone in that area. So this is what we did. And after that, this is called as a sleeve, the orange color which you're seeing there, creamy. So this sleeve is the one which will help us to make all these things are digital. They are there in the software. So then after that, I will try to mark the incisal regions, and then I will send it for a guide preparation. See this? This is your guide duplicate. This duplicates the stent. So once I have marked those incisal regions, this again will form into a guide which will interlock into the tooth and stay in position. Once I have done that, I will recheck whether the orientation is correct, whether the position is correct. Then I will give an entry for printing of the surgical guide. So this is how you will get in your software. It is quite easy to work on and quite very easy to get the duplicate of what you're doing. The only thing you need to do is, again, reposition it properly so that you get the outcome. Again, I will show you a few things. See this? This was when I started with the tooth. I'll go slow. This was when I had to correct it. Again, even after I corrected, see the implant here. See the implant. The position was, even though it shows correct over here in the DICOM, without the DICOM file, that is the bone file, I can see that the implant is not into the bone. It is giving an angulated position. So now I will correct it over here into the bone. And according to the opposing tooth, you can see the adjustment. I'm putting this video again because You need to see this. And again, it was not in the center. It was moving towards the canine. So I brought it back in position and I placed it so that it is in opposing harmony plus interproximally between the buccal and the lingual plates. So once this is confirmed, then is what I will introduce the sleeve. These sleeves are there in the software itself. This is sleeve. I think Hari sir would have told you this, that there are different types of sleeves. One, which you can start with the pilot drill and take it out, which we call it as a basic drill kit, which will cost you lesser. But usually when you want to have a bigger, that is, you want to do all the drill protocols through this, then you will have to have a bigger sleeve where you can accommodate. There is, the kits will have those accommodators, which you will expand. I'll show you the picture one by one what we did in our cases. Okay. So once this is completed, I think you will go ahead, pause this, mark all these incisors. I'm telling this again because this is what you will do in your guided software technology. This is how you print in your splint and then you will fabricate it completely. So this is the case. So we'll go to the cases. So now you know how to fabricate using a software. The digital software, you need to learn. It's a learning curve. Like how any surgery needs a learning curve, it's a learning curve. So now this case, why did we go for guided? Was there proper? It was a maxillary case. The sinus was falling down, but the patient was insisting us that he doesn't want a sinus lift procedure. He wanted to make sure that the implants are placed with the residual bone width which was there. So we sent all the files to the software company. That is the NaviGuide system, which we have for DO Navy. We sent it to them. They took the DICOM files. They did all the preparation. You can see they did not encroach the sinus, but they only engage the sinus. You don't want to break this. You don't want to break anything over here. So you don't want to do a sinus lift procedure. So the answer from the patient was very clear. He doesn't want to go for a sinus lift. We just went with whatever we had and we did the temporization for these cases is published. We did the temporization. It was the initial cases which we started doing with surgical guides. We temporized and we wanted to duplicate the same thing with the guide. You can see this. This is a guide, not for the pilot drill alone, but for the whole case. This is the width with which the implant will be placed. So we started using implant handpiece and then we started drilling it. We tried to remove the bone. Then we drove the implant through the drills, through the sleeves which were there present. This is your fully guided system where the implant is placed through the guide sleeves completely till the end. It is not that where you do only a pilot drill and then give an implant. So once this implant was placed, then we went in for the additional healing abutments, and then we left it for healing for 6 months, and then we gave the crowns. These were the crowns which are given for this patient. It's a 1-year follow-up which we have, which we published. So this is case 2. One more case which is there available. So this is a fully periodontitis case. It was collapsed case. So we started in the initial days with guided with a lot of work. So this was a full mouth rehabilitation case which we wanted to start. This is the OPG for that case which we did. So once the OPG shows that there is an extraction of this tooth and there are missing tooth here, the patient was very clear he wanted to go for implants on one side and then a rehabilitation. The bite was collapsed. Your target is not about only rehabilitating or placing an implant. It is a full mouth rehabilitation which the patient requires. Always keep in mind, address them completely. Don't address them like machines. Okay. So once it's done, we planned only for 4.4 and 4.6 region. The crest was very narrow. So we had to think about expansion, but the patient didn't want expansion. He wanted to be sufficed with whatever he was having. So we created a guide. We started to work on sides. You can see about how narrow this ridge was. That's why we wanted a guided system so that we can place these implants properly in place. So once we opened up the crest, we saw the bone width. Then we started drilling using a guide. We created a good amount of bone width. You can see some amount of crest marginal bone resorption is there after the drilling. That is because the width was not sufficient for us. You can see that the threads were exposed. We tried to graft, we tried to paste a connective tissue, and then we extended it along with the healing cap. This is after the implants were completely finished. This is pre-op, this is post-op with a complete rehabilitation of the case. So this is one more case, case 3. Again, bilaterally, we wanted to place implants. So the implant patient was very clear. He wanted a system which is 100% perfect. We didn't want to extract this premolar, which was RCT treated. So we took that along with that, but we did not handle. You can see the U curve so beautifully formed with the guided implant system. This is the guide sleeve. These are Navigant fabricators, which are less costly. The implant is there, as well as the abutment is there. I'll show you one more case where till the abutment and crown was done with the sleeve itself. You can see the perfection in the implant placement, the parallelism. So once the parallelism was attained, after 6 months, we went in for crown placement and restored it. You can see in the side that that curve was properly maintained. The advantage of the guide, what Hari sir said, was perfection. It will give you reproducibility of what you see in the CBCT. Additionally, it will help you to see whether you need a soft tissue augmentation or a hard tissue augmentation. This is one more isolated cases which I'm showing you. So this is one where we place 2 implants with a mild procedure, and we try to place this with a surgical guide, which was only a single tooth on the left side. So this was done using your Navigant guide. You can see subcrustally how much far we have gone so that we can engage the implant, and we gave a healing abutment simultaneously along with the tooth. This is one more case which was with extraction. It came with the endo-perio case. So we thought of doing an implant placement during the extraction itself as immediate implant placement, but then we stopped ourselves because most of the time a lesion like this will tell you that there's a vertical root fracture in the tooth. An endo-treated tooth, primarily when it is something like this, will have a vertical root fracture in the root. So always make sure that when you're doing something like this, you extract and you try to make sure that you preserve the socket. Once you preserve, this is 6 months after preserving, eight months after preserving of the socket with BIOS, then we sent it for CBCT evaluation. Then based on that, we started to develop a guide. You can see from the base of the sleeve. No, sir was telling about long drills. Long drills are very, very, very important over here when you are doing a surgical guide implant placement. You cannot have your regular implant drills which you have in the kit. You need to have long drill because that long part of the drill will take up into the shank or the shaft of the sleeve. So it will go past through that. So once that amount of height you need when you are placing an implant. Once that's done, you can see the parallelism, you can see the healing abutment placed, you can see a beautiful crown being given with not even a single bit of crestal bone loss evident. So this is one more case where it was extraction with implant placement. We wanted to atraumatically extract that lateral because of no bone support. We removed the period and we prepared a guide. This is bone to contact guide. Once you open up, it comes in contact with the bone, not a soft tissue shaft. So this comes in relation with it. So once it's done, you can directly drill through the shaft. So once you extract, you go through the shaft. You can see very clearly the parallelism. Keep it always more palatal. Anteriors, keep it more palatal so that you can engage properly. You can see a healing abutment being placed. And then this is the prosthesis which we gave with, there was some amount of black triangle which was there, but slowly we are including the composite so that the papilla fills back into that area. But you can see the parallelism of the implant. More perfect, straight. This is one more case, all individual cases with different scenarios I am showing you. Again, a direct case. Patient was given the option for guided and non-guided. He asked us about the cost and the facilitation chip. We told him about the cost. The patient was more than willing. 10,000 is what will cost you along with the guide when you are placing an implant with the crown. So this is your Navigant or a neonate system. Straight, place, immediate loading protocol. We didn't wait for healing. This is a full mouth case which we did for the lower arch. Upper was already a CD, complete denture. Lower, we wanted to remove it completely. See this? This is what was the CBC, the radiograph. Then we went in for CBCT. We checked for post-extraction how much of these tooth are going to be there. So we did for complete temporization with the surgical guide preparation. Saw about how the opposing occlusion is defined. We removed. We tried to do in for a lot of angulation and perfection with the implant placement and CBCT evaluation to get the guide. Once the guide with the sleeves were marked, we went in for implant placement along with the opposing in place. Once the implant placement was done, we immediately restored them with the screw retained prosthesis after placing an healing equipment. This is the lower arch which was cemented and 1 year now post healing. This we had done again a full mouth post implant placement. Lower already implants were placed in some other place. Upper we wanted to plan and the lower also we wanted to plan, but upper was the most important thing which wanted. Patient doesn't want more than 4 because he is already convinced that 4 implants can take up the load in the lower, so upper also. So we thought of expanding, but we couldn't. We satisfied the patient that we go guided if you want only 4. So then we planned for a guide, surgical guide, step-by-step stabilization of these full mouth surgical guides. Slowly, as I said, this is what the sleeve will be. You see the previous sleeve, how much big are the holes. You can see that this, you will get it into the kit itself. This is a shaft extender, which will reduce the shaft size. This will exactly drill in a 2 mm drill inside. 2 mm drill which goes in, you take that expander out, then a 2.2 mm drill, increase the arterial knee just to take a X-ray to see whether we are going in the right direction. Next 2.8, check one more X-ray if needed. This was initial days. So you wanted to multiply check how it works. Then 4.2, straight away, without the shaft, you are driving the implant inside, and the stabilization of this was absolutely more than 35 to 45 newtons. 4 implants placed, checked with radiograph, all in position, then went in for the virtual scanning for loading protocol. That was one case which was in the beginning of us. So why do I want to put this 2 publication or 3 publication which we did in our department is, this one case which I'll show you now, this was done after we did a graft socket preservation in that area. We preserved the socket with a bioactive glass. So once that was done, after 6 months, we placed those implants and we published them in as a continuous publication. One is one IJPRD, other one was an MDPI journal, which was a 3.70 impact factor. This was also done along with these protocols. This article is there available in the net. It's open access. This is the DO-Navy system. In this system, the abutments were also tightened using the shaft only. So we gave an immediate loading after the implant placement on the same day. This is 1 year follow-up check of how much bone loss was there pertaining to a control group and the test group where we did bioactive glass addition. So this is the advantage. These are few articles which will help you with meta-analysis saying that guided reduces the crestal bone loss which happens initially and improves the accuracy of your implant placement. These are few VDJ Nature journals which are there. This is one flow chart which will tell you when to use a fully guided system, when to use a partial guided system, when to you augment when you are simultaneously placing an implant, and what are all the key steps which are necessary to follow up. This is the future. That is your 3D impregnated implants. That is, you print your implant width and size based on the amount of bone which is available. This is one more 3D system which was there. See this, you can, this was a completely mandibulectomy case. They had tried to do a 3D crafted technique, which they removed. They want to see where the screw was and how much far the screw is going to engage your pterygoid process. So how much far it is going to get landed up over there or into your rest of the condyle, which is there evident over there. So this framework can be done completely using your 3D guided system. This is what will go into the patient's mouth. This was an partial mandibulectomy case, which was there. They were treating by the oral surgeons, which we could be a part of. So this is the accuracy which it gives. This is the implant Navi guide. I will show you this. What's the thing with this is, once you touch this and you go into this guide, you can see where your drill is coming onto the bone level. So you can adjust it based on a screen which it will be showing. So this is the next generation in which we are placing. See this, it will tell you in between the bone where you're going, and it will also tell you about how much of a depth you have gone back, how much of drill. So it will tell you when you are placing an implant, you don't need a guide, but this itself will act like a guide for you. This is your navigation system. There is one more system which is there available in the market now, which is robotic surgery. This is the last which I wanted to show you. See this? This was a case done in Yogi, which was in Japan. They tried to fabricate this part of the lost implant. This is still not into the market over here in India. They tried to see this. The computer was doing it. It was not the human. The computer, the robots were trying to drill in. The humans were assisting that robot. It was a hand which was going in straight. So it adjusted everything. And after the drill, you can see the drill itself, the osteotomy site itself shows you how the implant is going to go inside. It looked like a thread pattern. See, even the implant going inside is clearly visible. So this is future of dentistry and implantology. So I would like to thank my chief, Dr. Suresh, who is my guide. Without him, I am nothing. So whatever I am is because of him. I have to thank Dr. Esther ma'am and her team for being so instrumental in this and making sure that I do this. And I have to thank Dr. Victor, Professor and Head, sir. I think he's given me OD for some other purpose, but I'm additionally using it for this also. So I thank my team, Dr. Sangs, Deva, Jazz, and Anita, without whom it's my OP day today. So they're taking care of the OP day, and I'm here happily presenting. So a special thank to my students. Mention to Aishwarya PG, she's the one who did all this assembling of enlarging of slides or making them in order and putting few things in order, segment by wise. I thank my family members. This is my email ID and my phone number. If there is any doubts, anything, please, you're always welcome to call me. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir.
I know it was fast. I hope people understood it. Can I stop share? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Okay. Am I muted?
Am I audible now, ma'am?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Sir,
Nitya.
please accept the certificate on our behalf.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Ma'am, I hope I did justice. I know I was fast, but I hope I could show you some cases of guided which were done from our side.
Yeah, definitely, sir. It was very good.
Yeah,
Very useful too.
Thank you so much.
Sir, can we move on
Any
to the
question?
question and answer session?
Yes, yes, please, Doctor. Yes.
So now I request Dr. Tamil Selvi, reader, to take over the question and answer session. I request the participants to either unmute themselves and ask the questions or put their questions in the chat box.
any questions you can ask now.
I think Hari sir is there. He can take the maximum.
Prakash, it was a wonderful
Sir,
presentation, Prakash. Very
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yours was the base for me, sir.
I could not add any clinical pictures because mine was.
I told you not to add it.
Topic was like that.
I only told you not to add. Now,
Nice presentation, Prakash. Very nice.
Thank you, sir. We do a lot of case, ma'am, sir, and we do a lot of guided case department. So, sir gives me that free hand to work on.
So what would be your take-home message for the people who are starting to work on with implants? Because they get carried away, right? So how important is guides for an implant?
Sir can first address that question. Sir, Hari sir.
Yeah, guides are definitely very useful options. However, when if you say like 100 implants are being placed, in my experience, I've seen we can manage at least 60 to 70 implants freehand without any guides. Of course, we do some basic radiographic evaluation, and if required a small CBCT, sectional CBCT, which also is fine. But many of the cases we can manage without a stent if we have sufficient surgical skills. Probably if you want to be double sure about the nerve anatomy and the sinus floors, and if you're a beginner, probably using a guide to start with might be very helpful, as it is very safe. One thing, and predictably you can look for immediate loading, and you can go for a provisional restoration also. That option also is there. You go for a guided set distance. But at least see, as periodontists, we don't get ideal cases. We get all compromised cases. So probably some 30% of the cases we do require a stent. This is my suggestion. And probably for the beginners, definitely they can get a lot of confidence if they do successful cases initially with the stents, and then once they are comfortable with the stents, and they have they have done a reasonable distance in their learning curve, probably they can go for freehand at a later for ideal cases also.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, I would add on, as sir said, when we were doing implants, there were no guides. We started in 2006, 2007. That time guides was luxury. Only few people had that opportunity, and we did freehand learning only. But now guides are available even at a very lesser cost. Even for the initial pilot drill, you can use your guides. So, but as sir said, for initial cases, to get precision and confidence, you can use a guided implant system. And then as you grow as you become more confident about the bone anatomy and the type of bone, quality of bone, when you drill, you know it. So then you can slowly start doing freehand. As a beginner, going a freehand will have a lot of disparity between you placing and seeing the outcome of the result. So sometimes angulation makes a world of difference. So you think it's straight, but from here we will know that it's not parallel. So that can really hamper over a later period of time. Initially, you will give it up, correcting all those. But screw fracture, it's a most complicated thing. In those type of cases, initially when you do all these things with guided, it will give you a world of difference in your confidence. Then you know that you can do anything with perfection once you have a guide. And slowly, basic cases with good ridge width, height, you can go in for freehand. And complicated cases alone, I would now love to go only for guided for a full mouth case. I don't prefer freehand drilling nowadays. I go for a guided. But again, the cost matters. If the patient is not affordable for a guided implant placement, then you are at your experience. It all comes to end of the day about how much of implants you have placed freehand, and then which will help you out during that time. So it's a combination of both. You try to do both aspects to make sure that you are trying to see how you are growing, and after you grow, how you are experimenting. So this will be the take-home message.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Any other questions, ma'am?
There's a question in the chat box. Samir, there's a question in the chat box.
Nobody.
How much time will it take for robotic surgery to have started in India? I pray it doesn't come in India. That's the only answer which I
That's a
can
good
give.
answer, sir.
If it comes, we are all will be only assistants to robots. Better it doesn't come. Hari sir might give a more critic answer.
See, we all enjoy high-end technology, but we should see how. See, even those can go wrong. Okay. See the first surgery done in Japan. They had a trained implantologist on that side. It's not just a robot alone doing it. So anything goes wrong, it's going to be a miserable. And I'm not very sure how many patients will be happy to get a procedure done by a robot.
Okay, sir. I think we are at the end of the question answer session. I request Dr. Renuka Devi, Professor, Department of Periodontics, to give the vote of thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's indeed my special privilege to deliver the vote of thanks in this webinar, Perio-Orb 2023. I thank our chairman, Mr. Srinivasan, for his constant support. I am very much obliged to thank our principal, Dr. Sharat Ashokan, for giving us this opportunity to host this webinar. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to both the speakers, Dr. Harinath Parthasarathy and Dr. P.S.D. Prakash, for having shared their knowledge in this platform. I thank Dr. Prasad for his technical support. I would like to extend my special thanks to our faculty members and our PDs for making this webinar a splendid success. I hope you all had a great learning. Awaiting your participation in the future webinars as well. The feedback form link has been given in the chat box as well as in the WhatsApp group. Kindly fill it up. Once again, thank you all.
Thank you, doctor.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be sharing the feedback link right now,
Thank you,
and
everyone.
we'll be putting that in the Perio-Orb group also. Kindly fill up the forms. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Esther ma'am.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye, ma'am.
Hi, Dr. Esther. Thank you all. Yeah. Bye, Prakash.
Bye, sir.
We'll shut it down now.
Yes, ma'am. We have posted the the link for the feedback form, ma'am. So I think we'll put it in the Perio-Orb group also.
Yeah.
We'll close the session now.